1013 and WEVI. Today is Thursday, so you guys know what that means. We've had our first episode already. Here is episode 2 of Bush Tea and Gen Z Real Talk in the Morning. All right. It's okay to talk about it, which is the name of this specific episode. And here with me, joining me at the Raw FM studio, we have Renan, Giselle, and Marcus. Good morning. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. A pleasure to have you here yet again. Our first episode was absolutely amazing, so I'm looking forward to today's show. How y'all feeling today? I had a little bush tea this morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So today, last time we had a talk, we had a very basic conversation about mental health in our community and why it's important to have these discussions, right?
Yes.
So today we're going to go a little bit more in depth. And our first question for today, just to kind of just jump into the conversation, let's start with the basics, all right? When we say mental health, what are we really talking about?
When we talk about mental health,
First, before you start, introduce yourself. Let the people know who you is and what you do, all right?
my name is Giselle Ramos. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health at the Department of Health.
Yes. Awesome.
And jumping into the question,
Yes.
when we talk about mental health, we're referring to the person's overall well-being. So we're talking about the emotional, psychological, and social well-being, which affects how we think, feel, and act, how we handle, stress, relate to others, and make decisions. So it's all of good mental health, and good mental health isn't just the absence of mental illness. It's about being able to manage life's ups and downs.
Correct.
Maintain relationships and have a sense of purpose and balance.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nutshell,
mental
health is, just as important as physical health.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that because people usually don't correlate the two the same.
Correct.
They usually look at them as individual things when they are individual, but they make up the whole and they all operate the same, which is actually the most important. So we look at physical healing, totally different than we do emotional and mental healing, which is why we need to have this conversation. We accept it more. Exactly. It's much more. And we want to know why is that? That's my second question. Why do you think it's been so hard, especially in the Caribbean families and communities, to talk openly about mental health? That might be one of them, right?
Yeah.
Big time.
So stigma.
Correct.
Stigma is one of them, like we spoke about last week. Stigma in the Caribbean, we associate the term mental health as something negative rather than positive, in a sense of where we can actually, receive services and, whether it's medication treatment or whatever, they look at it as something negative rather than a more holistic approach, a positive approach. So stigma and pride is always associated with that. And I'll let the others chime in.
Tell us who you are.
Yes, my name is Marcus Moorhead. I'm a mental health therapist over at Island Therapy Solutions.
Okay, neighbor.
Yes, yeah. When I was asking where's the location, they say right across the street.
Literally. Quick little field trip.
But yes, the stigma, the things that I hear most often when somebody says, I want you to go get counseling. The first thing they say is me no paraman.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, whoa, where's that coming from?
Like nothing is wrong with me.
Nothing's wrong with
right.
me. As if you have a mental health issue, it's the extreme version.
Correct.
Almost to a point where like, okay, this person needs medication. This person needs to be, off island in a program rather than you just struggling. I have anger issues, right? I feel more tired than often, more often than not.
Right. People more correlated to being crazy per se, right? That's the moniker that people tend to use when describing what they think the actual issue is. Or and as such, because of that, it comes off more when somebody's saying to you, hey, you need a hand, you need some help, or you should go and talk to somebody. That is more of an offensive approach to anyone, male or female, coming from that. And sometimes you need to tell somebody, hey, I think you should either come with me to go see somebody, or you should see someone, and I can recommend.
About the approach.
Right, yeah. But it's so stigmatized. Even now, while the conversation is happening more and more and more circles, even now it's so stigmatized that it's more offensive than anything else. There is no right way to tell someone that they should speak to someone, because everybody is on a journey. Everybody is learning something new. Everybody's approaching life from a different aspect. It's actually trending right now. Healing has becoming a trending thing, right? So what's the difference with mental health? You know?
Yeah, well, I would say Renan Steele. Currently, my hat I'm wearing is deputy commissioner, but I'm also a licensed clinician. So culturally, we were raised to not only be strong as a people,
correct,
but resilience was always pushed into us because of everything we experienced, and that same resilience that our parents raised us under for Gen Zs have told us to keep your stuff private. You don't share your business in a culture. You don't want to be labeled as if you're dealing with something mentally and emotional.
Or come off weak.
Exactly. And like Marcus said, they always see the deep end of the spectrum, and they don't realize how many people are walking around each day still functioning, however, have some internal struggles, dealing with situations at home. Gen Z is trying to learn, how do I transition as I'm becoming a young adult?
Right.
Where do I see myself fit in? And because of all the advancements during the Gen Z generation with technology, everything, they have also at the same time become the ones that's more open to accepting help and seeking help, because they see it available, whether it's online, through social media, exposure and stuff like that. So on one end, they're exposed to a lot of things that could be detrimental to their mental wellness, because we kind of line ourselves up to, do we compare to what we're seeing? But at the same time, because they're open, it gives a door in to get some assistance.
Okay. And I like you talked about being open, because what we're seeing and why this conversation is centered around Gen Z, ladies and gentlemen, is because we actually are seeing more and more so that Gen Z feels more comfortable with the mental health conversation than any generation prior to, including millennials. Absolutely. Now, I would say probably millennials were the test dummies for everything, because they run it through us first, and then they say, okay, that works, let's go ahead. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, Gen Z being more comfortable having the conversation, what has changed, and why are young people having more previous responses in previous generations? But before we answer that question, let's cut to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. You guys are tuned in to Bush Tea in the Morning. This is Bush Tea and Gen Z Real Talk Show with Department of Health, and we'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad. Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
All right, and we're back. You're tuned into 101.3 Row FM WEVI and Bush Tea in the Morning. Today is Thursday, so we're continuing our special on mental health with the Department of Health. We're here on Bush Tea and Gen Z Real Talk in the Morning, and this is episode 2. We're picking back up where we left off. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. How y'all doing?
Doing all right.
Great. So before the break, we were talking about Gen Z and why they are the generation that is more open to the conversation of mental health as well as the practices. You understand? So they're more welcoming with open arms in terms of saying, okay, what has been going on isn't working. We're going to abandon that. We're going to try something new, hit or miss. So let's talk about why that generation is so important, key-wise, to how we change the stigma and change the way we move forward and making, some of the issues we have, some of these generational curses are things of the past, right? So welcome to everyone that's listening on the dial as well as on the Facebook app, as well as on the TuneIn app. Good morning to you guys as well. So So tell me, why do you guys think that that is the case? Why is Gen Z more comfortable talking about mental health, and what has changed? Why are young people more open to the previous generations?
Well, I think the blessing and the curse of social media, right? Where it's a blessing because we're able to have conversations widespread, right? It's not just one person having the conversation in their household, where sometimes people are not open to having those conversations. They might be having that conversation with people in their community, friends in their school, people across the world, right? And they're just seeing everybody talk about that same issue, and nobody's really, it's harder to suppress it when it's online, right? It's easy to suppress it when it's in your house. Don't talk about that. That's a personal problem. Keep it behind closed doors. So it's a blessing, but it's a curse at the same time, because then we have to control the narrative, control the information, and that's hard to do when things going viral and misinformation. We see it today.
Right.
So yeah, blessing and a curse of the social media for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. And I think it also at the same time, that same social media platform also give somewhat like a cloak, a little distance between it. A lot of the Gen Z don't like to talk about it face to face.
Right.
Have a little anonymity and say, I could put this out there and see people's responses. And when people offer that support, they're more open to letting that out.
That's very true. And I like that you mentioned that it's harder for them to have conversations face to face, because that's one of the challenges that that generation tends to face when they go for therapy.
Correct.
Because they're now forced to have conversations that they don't practice having in person, because they're more of the technology era kids that came up in, less expressive times. So, all right. So, we have a clip that we want to play for you guys, and we want to start that discussion. And before we continue with these questions, all right? So let's hear what this clip has to say, and then we'll discuss.
What are some of the real life mental health struggles that Gen Zs have?
Having a single parent, or staying focused in class and not straying after random strippiness.
Okay.
Your whole life and school. Yeah. Depression, when you're depressed, depression comes from I would say cyberbullying, from go down, yeah.
I would say the environment and how people act around them.
And how people treat you.
Yeah. If you act positive, if the people around you act positive, you probably gonna act positive. They act negative.
And then it's a reflection of their
parents.
I'm 70 years old and I really never talked about mental health in my generation. I feel like a myth is that mental health ain't really real. I just got tough it out and start being a punky chick. The other question is, I feel like struggles for my generation is that they don't really understand that they're addicted to weed and it'll cause mental health problems.
All right. So we had a little feedback there. We apologize for that. So guys, all right. What we just heard is some of the struggles that this generation is facing, deal with mental health problems, as well as their outlooks on the issue. All right. You guys have any input on that? One of the things they mentioned that stood out to me was the marijuana issue. Right? It's a very, very prevalent conversation here in our community because it's culturally accepted, even if not legally, right? And that's something that's been going on since Jesus was in flip-flops. So this generation, not alas, don't have nothing to do with we inherited it, right? So, but let's talk about it. This is their view on their real life situation that they're dealing with right now as a generation, just hearing some of their input on the topic. So tell me, what do you think?
Well, I think that one of the most powerful things was, I think there was a 17-year-old boy. He said he never had a conversation about mental health.
Right.
He said one of the most common misconceptions is that mental health is a myth, right? So even with him not having conversations about it, he knew that can't be right.
Right.
Can't be right. But, being 17 years old, I know it's a new generation. I didn't really know much about mental health till I went to college. Right?
Okay.
You could see the problems, but you don't put words to it.
Okay.
But, one thing that, we shouldn't be 17 years old. Somebody shouldn't have to go through 17 years of life, almost graduating from high school,
right,
having a conversation about mental health, right? Because hopefully somebody talked to him about physical health. Hopefully somebody talked to him about safe sex. But mental health just as important, right?
Right. And that's so true.
And I find that it's not openly talked about.
Correct.
So that's why he may have not heard about mental health, and he feel like it's a myth and so forth, because we're not welcoming it, like we said earlier. We're not welcoming it as a normal conversation, and it should be a normal conversation, because this is our everyday life, our overall well-being of ourselves. So therefore, we should be able to have a normal conversation, just like how we will talk about sex.
Correct.
And so forth. We need to talk about the signs of mental health and everything like that. So it needs to be more welcoming and open to talk about.
I kind of want to piggyback off of what you said a little bit before I get to your comment, right? Because you mentioned that there's a time frame for when sex ed is a conversation. There's a time frame in their development. There are cues and markers for when certain things need to happen as a child is developing throughout life. Do we need to create the cue and marker for when the mental health starts? Because that's from the very beginning. Correct. You have to nurture that mental health. And a lot of times parents don't know how or even what to look for, simply because of the tradition behind of it. There's never been a space left open for mental health or the discussion, or even how to ensure that your child is healthy mentally. So if you don't have it generationally, how are you passing it on to them, right?
Yes, yes.
So, but go ahead.
Yes, I'd add to that. I like to say we noticed the difference also in the male. You spoke about it as the perspective of the female, and he mentioned the fact that you're always told as males growing up, you just need to man up, deal with that. Men don't cry, men don't show weakness. It's telling you to suppress those emotions.
Correct.
So a lot of men then, therefore, grow up with a lot of issues where they're not dealing with conflict the right way. They're not knowing how to express themselves because they're told you could never do so.
Correct.
And then they expect that when you see the young females doing it, they're saying, okay, well, okay, that's just emotions, because we expect that from things. So it further feeds that stigma that's creating the issues where we see less Gen Z males coming into treatment. I'm sure Marcus would agree, and Giselle over there. So we're still trying to get through that. And to answer the second part where you just mentioned, a very valid point, this is why we have spent a lot of time in the school systems doing prevention work and exposing them younger and younger to those conversations of mental awareness.
Right.
And individuals don't realize there's something called adverse children experiences, adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
And it's those small things that never been addressed all the way up or identified later affects your well-being overall going forward.
And the head. Nice.
Man. See, listen, we're having the conversation, and as a participant, I'm impressed. But as a mother, I got some questions because, but before we go into that, we do have another clip that we would like to hear and share with you guys before we continue this segment of the conversation. All right, here we go.
I would say that we are the most in tune generation so far with our mental health. I feel like we believe that our mental health is above all else. Some real life mental health struggles Gen Z have, especially in the Virgin Islands, I would say is bridging that gap. Although we are very in tune with our mental health, I'll say in the continental US or in general, the culture is our mental health is above all else what's important to us. However, in the Virgin Islands, I feel like growing up, getting to that level of prioritizing our mental health is not a priority. I feel like everything else is put above that. And I feel like eventually you come into your own and like, hey, my mental health is this. I know I need to focus on this and this and this. But in the Virgin Islands, there's definitely still that stigma in the Black community of you need to get off that phone, or you need to go outside and play, or you need to find something better to do. And that's why you feel in the way you feel, and not because you might have a mental health illness, not because you need therapy, not because you having trauma that is unresolved, not because things are going on within your home, but because you not doing something the right way and you always on that phone, or you always letting other stuff influence you. You just need to do it this way and that. So I think that's a big struggle, is us telling adults or older generations the issue that's happening with our mental health and it not being taken seriously because the older generation and Virgin Islands don't believe in that.
All right. So notice you said emotions are temporary. All right. So I feel like the messages are getting across to them probably because of their openness, the mentality and everything, right? They're looking for answers, they're trying to understand certain things, and they're starting life in the middle of a transition. So understand how difficult that might be from their perspective, because when you look around in the midst of a community transition, this isn't just the Virgin Islands, this is worldwide. This is happening, right? And the conversation is happening in every language. So being born in the middle of that, it's almost like as if everywhere you turn, nobody really knows the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody is learning as they're going. They're figuring it out. We're getting the answers, and every time, sometimes we think we're going in the right direction. It pulls us on a different path, and it says, okay, well, no, maybe that's not the way. That actually causes this, and this, and we're seeing signs of that, and the studies are coming out, and so there's so much information. It's overwhelming that for the older generations, they tend to shut down because that's what they know, and the younger generations are just kind of left to figure it out. So being born into, it's almost like you're being born in the age of information. Right? So and
overwhelming,
right? And that's something that none of us over a certain age are ever gonna be able to relate to. You know, you're not gonna get a second childhood, right? So what we knew childhood to be is what we think it is for everyone, but that's not the case. So, and that in itself contributes to the mental health issues that we have. So it causes a disdain in how we communicate, what we understand, even different values, morals are changing throughout the generations to where it's almost like we're speaking different languages.
Right.
So, I love the points that they came with. I wanted to ask, some young people may feel pressure to hide how they're feeling. What are some signs that some might be struggling silently?
So many young people and adults as well.
Right.
The Gen Z population, they hide their emotions, the pain, because they don't want to be judged, feel like a burden. I often hear that a lot, or fear being misunderstood, but there are often warning signs such as withdrawal. For the emotional and behavioral signs, there are often withdrawals,
right?
Isolations and sudden mood changes. And with the withdrawals, they stop, say for instance, they stop hanging out with friends or avoid activities when you know that this person is a social butterfly and they're always out there, being active. One thing is withdrawal and sudden mood changes.
That's very true.
Noticeable sadness and anger or emotional numbness is often an emotional sign. There is also physical signs as well, where you have declining performance, dropping grades,
random cuts and bruises.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Missing work or school, frequently. And hygiene. Hygiene is a part of it. Neglecting your hygiene, not caring about how they look or seeming like, checked out and so on.
I want to add to what you're saying because those different signs show up for both men and women, but they show up differently in men and women. And a lot of times what we deem, especially for men, as aggressive behavior, lashing out, that kind of, and we tend to say, oh, he's crazy. And no, a lot of times it's built up, coming out.
And cry for help.
And it's a cry for help, yes, because there's a bottleneck somewhere where that stuff built up for so long and now it's coming out, but it's coming out in bits and pieces and causing these chain reactions of things. So, and it does show up sometimes, like you mentioned, if you notice somebody's always bubbly and, that changes. But you know what? We always think of the extreme ways that people show signs. Oh, they're cutting out risks, this and that and the other. There are more subtle ways than there are extreme ways, especially if you know what to look for early on.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I think one trick that I learned when I was in school, I was working underneath a psychiatrist, and he told me, we were working in a psychiatric hospital, and a big thing was suicidal, right? People coming into the hospital, they're suicidal. It's but if somebody's suicidal, they want to leave, right?
Correct.
They want to harm themselves. So he taught me this trick. We would go into the rooms and we check in on people, and the person say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing good," and he would say, "Okay, well, we're thinking about letting you go. What's your plans for next week?" And they could not come up with an answer because they could not see their life
that
into
far.
Next week.
Correct.
They were thinking about harming themselves. He said, "Okay, well, don't worry about it. We'll check in again later." And they were like, "Well, are you gonna let me go?" And he said, "Well, we're gonna see." And he taught me that trick because if somebody's coming in and you're asking, "Oh, what's going on? What you got going on?" They say, "Oh, I don't know. I just trying to make it to tomorrow, man. I just trying to make it to tomorrow." That's a
sign. Yeah.
Because you're not, people are looking forward to vacation. Yeah, looking forward to Carnival. I'm looking forward to Christmas. I'm looking forward to the holiday. I'm looking forward to my time off, right? They're talking about their future. They're excited about their plans.
Correct.
But if you can't make plans, then that means you need help right now.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
And we know.
And what does that help always look like sometimes? Because we think you need help right now. We think emergent situations, I think we're kind of programmed that way thanks to Hollywood, but we think emergency automatically is like, oh my God, somebody's going to die. And when you think on those extremes, it's really hard to offer help because if you're panicking, you can't do much to help me.
Correct.
Right? So part of the conversation is knowing what to look for as well as how to respond. You don't want to be too nonchalant. You don't want to brush it off because that leaves room for more danger. You also don't want to overreact because that person is going to shut down and ultimately you're not going to be able to help. So there's a lot that needs to be. It's kind of like CPR. If you don't know what to do, are you really going to help that person? So, I love the fact that we're having that conversation from understanding that you can approach mental issues in this with the same regard that you use for physical emergencies because the steps might be slightly different, but the protocols are probably going to be the same. Guys, so what does support actually look like at home, in school, or even between friends? Tell me.
Well, I think support could look in so many different ways. I've had some people say, I just want somebody to be next to me. We didn't got to talk. We don't have the answers. I just want somebody to be here with me so they don't feel too alone. Other people, they just want to feel normal in having the problems that they're having. Right. I think you mentioned a few times, right, how we talk about mental health determines how we deal with mental health.
Correct.
The first session often is the hardest session, because a person doesn't know what to expect. They don't know how the person's going to react. They don't know if they're going to be judged and all these kinds of questions. But when they come in and you say, oh, okay, what's going on? And they, eventually develop the courage to talk. And then you respond like, oh, okay, I hear, I understand what's going on. So what do you do to help yourself, right? You start treating it more conversationally, and all of a sudden you just see them kind of melt into their chair like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And then they look forward to the next session. They look forward to the session after that because they're like, I finally have a place to where I could just feel normal and having these issues.
Right. And that's so important too, because a lot of times, especially because I said we come from an extremist community, right? So we always looking for the more extreme answer to everything. But a lot of times it's as simple as just being there. Just being there. I might be struggling with something mentally, but I have it under control. And today is just a harder day of a combination of things that I have not yet figured out how to deal with or how I even feel about it to deal with it, right? But I'm judging myself and I'm stuck in my mind and I have all these repeating voices in my head. Oh, you're failing, this going wrong and that going wrong. And you have all the right reasons for it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still going wrong, right? So those things create anxieties all the time. And as a person who deals with anxiety, that's one of my struggles, right? So, but you find coping mechanisms, you find ways to deal with it. But on that journey, I'm not going to lie to you. When I first realized that it is anxiety that I was dealing with, coming to that realization was one, because you have to get past the thoughts that go, something's wrong with me. And you start to go, you know what? And how I came over that was letting myself know, you're not the first and you're not going to be the last. Figure it out, right? It's the same way I deal with single motherhood, to be honest.
For the Gen Z population, care, consistency, and connection is something that you will want to provide for them.
Correct.
Provide support and normalize emotions.
Correct.
It's okay to say, I'm not okay. We also heard
Say that again. Say that again.
To say I'm not
okay.
So
and it's okay to not panic when somebody says that too.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think support at home has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because again, the unfortunate side of all the social media and things that we stay so caught up in.
Right.
A lot of parents raising Gen Z don't have time for the kids anymore.
That's very true. That's very true.
Or texting their kid in the bedroom instead of having a conversation.
That's true.
So we lost that sit down at the dining table and have a meal and find out how your day went. That connection is
right
now, but we do need to set back to that. A lot of parents could show that support by checking in with your kids every day, checking in with your friends, peers, and finding those individuals who you feel comfortable speaking with, because that's the one you're going to trust when you really need help.
Do you guys feel like maybe it's a catch-22 that technology actually creates more modems for us to communicate and literally restricts us from doing exactly that?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It literally has taken us further back in communication than we've ever been historically. And yet it's still such an essential tool. And maybe because knowing that everything is so easily accessible, we just don't access it.
And with that population, they rely on technology a lot.
Heavily. Because everything is at your fingertips. You don't apply effort in a lot of areas. We're losing the ability to provide effort in our home spaces, at work. You know, you're finding a lot of people getting burned out more and more easily the more effort something requires, and it's because we're not utilizing a lot of that energy anymore. I remember days we used to get up in the morning, you had a full schedule, you did by 6 o'clock, and it's like without looking at a clock or without having a device in your hand, you knew what time it was, you knew where you needed to be, you knew how to look at the sun, you could have tell, okay, that's about that time. You could have had a school bell ring right before it rings because you were so in tuned with your surroundings. Right. We're coming further and further away from that. Actually, the only thing I feel now is I could kind of tell right before my phone go ring that going ring. That's it. I feel like somebody gonna call me. I feel like, how did I do that? So wow, what a time to be alive.
Yeah, talk about connection.
Wow. Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It means that we're not losing our abilities as human beings. We're just applying them in different areas now.
It's funny because in many ways, so a lot of the things that adults or the older generation say now are correct, but the way in which they phrase it,
correct.
They're having mental health discussions without even realizing it, right?
Yes.
You're on your phone too much, right? Turn off your phone. But they're not having the explanation of
as to why
you're on your phone so much, you're not even in tune with your emotions. You're not in tune with me. You're not in tune with your family.
Correct.
You're not in tune with the community, right? And then they also saying things like, well, the one clip of the young man talking about being addicted to marijuana, right?
Right.
They saying you shouldn't be smoking. It's because of da-da-da, not thinking of having the conversation of, well, smoking might also contribute to, some kind of numbness, right? It might make you feel anxious, right?
It's a coping mechanism for a lot of people.
There's so many things that they say, because I hear it now, I'm like, oh, wait, that's technically a mental health discussion.
Correct.
The way you're framing it is, it's kind of like short, cut off.
To the point.
The kid just feels you're not listening.
Yes.
Your own thing.
Like you were saying in one of the clips, I think it was a young guy, was saying that, they always telling us what to do. That generation. And I agree with that. But that generation always telling the children them what to do rather than guiding them, providing suggestions that is beneficial for them and so forth. And what I find too is that they want them to go down their path of what they used to do back then, rather than realizing everything is better now, everything changed. Your path might not be the same path for this individual because things have changed so drastically.
Right.
So rather than saying what to do, telling them what to do, provide suggestions and guidance. And this generation needs a lot of guidance because they're our future.
Right.
Yes.
I love that you said that too, because it shows a gap in the generations and how we learned. Our parents, right? And I ain't trying to tell nobody age. Well, our parents, they came from a generation who was like, you're told and you follow what you're told. You don't question it.
Do as I say, not
right.
Exactly.
I think the generation right after that started to question, but was more what's the word? Obedient, right?
Push the envelope too much.
Correct. There was a lot more discipline. We're going to ask the whys, but I don't want to disrespect you, so I might ask the why somewhere else. And now we're seeing more and more openness in the generations as they come along, right? Now, this one is openly asking and not afraid to ask and doesn't think it's disrespectful, but how it's perceived as you go down the line. This is where the conflict ends up in our communication, because you're trying to get across to me in a way that makes sense to you might come off disrespectful to me, and vice versa, and I actually witnessed a situation like that earlier this week. And the young lady even mentioned, she said, I don't understand, where is the disrespect? I have not yet disrespected you. And that brought up a conversation in my mind, because it was like, clearly we have two completely different understandings of what respect is. And a lot of times what we deem to be disrespectful, it's actually a trigger because it touches you somewhere, but you don't have the answer for it. So you know what? You shouldn't even be asking me that. How dare you? But is it the problem? Is the question the problem? Or is the actual feeling behind it what's the issue. Something can be adjusted to where the conversation can continue, but both have to be willing. And that's where we kind of meet that impasse a lot of times, especially with mental health, because it's such a sensitive topic and everybody has a different feeling behind it, depending on how you were raised and where you came from. Yes. So I love that you said that. So continuing with the conversation, it says, if someone is listening right now and struggling, what is one thing you would want them to know?
You're not alone. You're not alone. And there is always help.
I love that you said that, because everybody, and I think it's important that we say this as well too, correct me if I'm wrong, because out of everybody having a conversation, I think I'm the least qualified.
The way he's talking about this stuff, I was like, wait. We gotta see the credentials beforehand, you know what I mean? Worked as a nurse, worked in the psychiatric this, and then turned into the radio broadcasting.
Well, that's kind of true, but kind of, but I have an extensive life very quickly. So I had a lot of experiences at a very young age, and then settled down to do the wife and the mother thing and whatnot. So yes, but as far as the conversation goes, right? We're saying what to let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
I love that, but also to let everybody know that we all, nobody makes it past a certain age. And I think right now the age is like 10. Nobody makes it past a certain age without experiencing some kind of mental health adversity. And that is real. That is very real.
Yes.
So I don't care who you are, if you're sitting around or walking around. I don't care how much work you've done on yourself. And it's not something that the word healed, that is the only myth, is what I think. Because you cannot experience your experiences. So you're always going to be affected by them. Even if you change how you're affected by them through doing the work and having the conversations and practicing different ways of looking at things, you still will always know that, hey, this is something that I was sensitive to and this is why. So is healed an actual thing, or is it a cop-out? Because if I say that I'm healed, then I don't need healing, right?
Right.
When healing is continuous. So I feel we need to focus less on the trends of being healed and actually focus on what does continuous healing look like, because this is the thing about life as well too. You might feel like you're healed from a trigger from 10, 15, 20, 2 years ago, right? Something that happened that at first affected you. But yesterday your mother said something to you. Or yesterday you had a falling out with your baby daddy or your baby mama or your child or something, and that leaves a string, a little, and all that is just, it plants a seed. Right. And if that seed can grow roots, it can become a bigger manifestation of something else, or even combined with the wrong things, the wrong experiences, the wrong things that you're exposed to. It can fester into something more, right?
And that leads right into the feel of what we do. People have this misconception that going to therapy or counseling is going to heal you when it's not. We're going to provide you with the coping skills and the knowledge to be able to work through your own things when you feel
to learn.
Those. So every time you come across some adversity, whatever you're dealing with, you would better know how to cope with that, how to process that, or help someone else process that. So it's not to heal, it's constant work.
Exactly.
You're aware of what triggered you before, you know how to react differently the next time you face it.
And learning how to identify your triggers in the moment and not necessarily after, when you're reflecting and going, oh, I see what I did there. But in the moment and saying, okay, you just said something. I felt that, but I'm not going to cater to it right now. I'm going to revisit that when I have some more information, or figure out why I feel the way that I feel because you said that or because you did X, Y, and Z. That is what healing actually looks like. It's a sense of accountability, because you're free to be who you are. You're free to be who you are. You're free to be who you are. And I'm free to be who I am. At no time do you owe me your personality, or do you owe me the ability to cater to mine, right? But I'm still required to operate as an upstanding person in this community, right? Citizen in this community. And I'm supposed to be a mom, and I'm supposed to be, a professional and all this stuff. But yet I have moments where I act out of character.
And you have to find coping mechanisms.
And you have to find ways to deal
with it.
Exactly. In these small communities, and my heart goes out to anybody that is well known in these communities, because these small places where it's so easy to pick up notoriety. You could do one thing for a short period of time and suddenly, use the positive from so and so and so.
They identify you from those negative experiences.
Correct. Yes. And if you didn't grow up with that amount of attention from so many people that you know, because it's one thing to go in the States and become well known, because you don't know any of those people.
Exactly.
When you are well known among a community of people that you know, listen me.
Mm-hmm.
And that can actually cut that. Exactly. Judged all the time. Right.
No one is listening.
Correct. Correct.
And one thing that kind of in a similar in the hand of what to tell Gen Z, right, is everybody got something.
Yes.
There is no family, there is no person, there is no such thing as perfection. Everybody has some kind of issue that they're working on in their own household. Yeah. And the times in which we see that as normal rather than taboo is the time where we will start to heal as a community. Mm-hmm. And that same thing of, okay, I had these issues growing up, or I had these issues during this time of my life, and I'm going to forever be known as that. They see that as a state of permanence, right? They don't see that as, we are dynamic people that, I am not who I was last year. I'm not who I was 6 months ago. I'm not who I was before I got on this radio show. I was nervous. I come up here, I feel relaxed. Next thing you know, maybe I could do this more often. Maybe I should try and do more public speaking, So our experiences are constant. So why we can't change with those constant experiences?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. Anything you want to add to that? No. I gotta love the conversation, man, because we definitely tapping into a lot of different angles of the things that actually affect our community, and why, in 2025, we're still seeing the signs of these mental health issues in our community that are being cast aside. You're seeing it in the publications, you're seeing it in the news every time somebody either gets arrested or, the headlines. And what we see in our community a lot of the time is domestic violence. There's been an uptick since COVID, especially, right? And I think COVID had a big part to play, but COVID is not to blame. Right? COVID just revealed what was already festering.
Right.
Correct.
It gave it a place where it's kind of like all the ingredients were in the petri dish, but all it really, COVID just took it and shake it up, mix everything together, and then you started to see all this stuff growing, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But it was always there. It was always there. How do we actually attack the things that are showing up in the negative ways, the things that have already adversely affected us in a community, that we're seeing these things, everybody has some story where they can relate to it. How are we actually making the changes or opening the doorways so that we can lower the rise of these things to happen in the community while still having a conversation and dealing with the issue? We know what the issue is, but how do we actively attack it,
Well, I think the initiatives that are happening with Department of Health, and Department of Health a lot of the times collaborates with a lot of the mental health agencies on St. Croix to do trainings and presentations. Yeah, we do a lot of presentations in schools, so we're starting to educate kids from young. And then the other part of it is, the more we destigmatize, the more people ask for help, the more people are willing to help each other, right? I think right now with the whole, the economic state of the world, right? Everybody is stuck in survival mode, busy. I gotta work, I gotta go home, I gotta cook, sleep, repeat, right? All I'm focused on is my money, my kid's alive, my kid got a roof over their head, my kid's eating, good, right?
No balance.
There's no balance. There's no, that we forget about the experience of living, right? What are we doing this for? What am I working for, right? So if we can, to try and get out of survival mode, right? Find more of that balance, talk more with your neighbors, talk more with the community, be more involved, people are going to start changing their minds of, okay, this isn't normal. We need to work on this, right? Domestic violence, abuse in the house towards children, all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. All right. So tell us, what is the 988 Lifeline and how does it work? And what are the resources available here in the Virgin Islands?
So before I answer that question,
Tell me.
We're going to actually do a challenge for the Gen Z population out here.
Hey, okay.
Parents and adults. So this weekly challenge is going to be, for the Gen Z population, talk to a parent, teacher, or adult you trust and tell them how you are really doing. So that's the Gen Z needs to approach, the adult population.
Repeat that one again.
For the Gen Z population, talk to a parent, teacher, or adult you trust. Tell them how you are really doing. And for the parents and adults, ask a young person in your life how they are feeling.
Okay.
So that's the challenge.
So that's a challenge. We're challenging the community to participate, and this is what the challenge is for this week, all right? So again, share now. Go ahead. Share the 9800 Lifeline for us. Let us know how it works. And are there any local mental health resources available here in the Virgin Islands?
Yes. So if you are someone you know is struggling, help is always available. You're not alone. Call or text 988 or chat online at 988lifeline.org. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is free, confidential, and available 24/7. And it's also available for veterans as well. You just press 1. For local support, the Virgin Islands Department of Health Behavioral Health Division is here for you. Open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On St. Thomas, you can call 340-774-7700 or visit us at Barbell Plaza. On St. Croix, you can call 340-712-0096 or visit us at Vitraco Mall across from Golden Rock Subway. On St. John, you can call 340-776-6400 or visit us at the Morris de Castro Clinic.
That's right. Listen, so there are a lot of resources available for our community. Please be sure to utilize them, all right? We got to make sure that we nip this in the bud so that our kids and grandkids don't have the same issues. We should be able to talk about this like it was something of the past.
Yes.
Soon and very soon, right? So, and remember, healed is not the goal. Learning the right tools and how to approach the issue is what we're aiming for, all right? So I want to thank you guys so much for coming here on the show. This has been yet another episode 2 to be absolutely clear, but it's okay to talk about it, part 2. All right. This has been Bush T and Gen Z Real Talks in the Morning. Thank you guys. Next time we're going to bring some Bush T for you.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'm going to bring the hot water. I'll bring the rest.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure and looking forward. So, guys, next week, Thursday, we're going to pick up the conversation again. Each and every Thursday, you can tune in to Bush T and Gen Z. All right. Right here on 101.3 Ro FM WEVI. Next week, we're going to be speaking on managing stress and anxiety with Department of Health Zen Squad. All right. So make sure you don't miss it. Don't diss it. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation yet again. And we'll be back next week, Thursday, with even more.